This is Expound, expanding your knowledge of the truth of God by explaining the Word of God in a way that is interactive, enjoyable, and congregational.
Hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. You know, we've been talking a lot about Egypt and the plagues that happened during that period of time with Pharaoh and Moses. And I want to introduce you to somebody. Some of you may remember him. We prayed for he and his wife before they went to Africa. But please welcome Dr. Dale Ericson. Welcome, Doc.
Thanks.
Dr. Ericson is a physician. He's a nephrologist. And if I'm correct, is that just kidney, or is that kidney, ureters, bladder?
We do everything.
You do everything. You're a full-service physician.
Right.
Dale, I've known you for years, but tell us a little bit about yourself. You've done work in Africa, and you've been going to Africa for many years.
Right. Actually, I went to Africa the first time in 1964, and I was a medical student at Indiana University School of Medicine, and I had an opportunity to work in a mission hospital, what was called Southern Rhodesia then. Now it's called Zimbabwe, and I did that for 3 months, and I fell in love with the African people and Africa. And my wife and I returned in 1968 to start and open a mission hospital called Chitamoyo, close to the Zambezi Valley in that area. And we did that for 2 years.
Now, how often do you go there?
We go now. We worked there altogether 6 years, counting all the times we've been. We lived there 2 years, one stretch, 3 years, another stretch teaching in the medical school. And we usually go every other year. We went last year for the month of May and taught in the medical school, both of us.
It's an interesting mix. You're a professional, you're a physician here in town with Presbyterian Hospital, but you have a missions heart.
Yep.
And has it been mostly Africa?
Yes, I've been to a few other places. My wife's been to more places than I have, like Papua New Guinea and other places, but I've also, remember when the mission group went to Kosovo?
Yes.
I was part of that group as well. I taught in the medical school there with our mission team here.
Excellent.
But otherwise, Africa.
Well, we've been talking in the Bible about some of the plagues that happened during the time of Moses. Are there any kind of plagues that you can say are modern day plagues? And I hesitate on my words because when I say that, you know, the Bible says these were plagues from God, and when there's tragedy, human suffering, you don't want to say that's a curse from God because of the implications of that. But are there widespread plague-like diseases that we see in the world today?
Absolutely. In Zimbabwe, we have had, and also Southern Africa, but particularly our experience was regarding HIV/AIDS. Of course, we all know about that. And the other one last couple of years ago was cholera, a major problem. Can I just talk about that briefly?
Please.
Cholera first. 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago now, 2008, the country nearly collapsed, Zimbabwe. We didn't go to Zimbabwe that particular year. We planned to. We went to Malawi instead because everything collapsed. The medical school was closed down. The university was closed down. The hospitals were closed down. In fact, inflation was 1,000% per day.
I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, and some of you may know this from previous conversations, but I'm a billionaire. I have a $5 billion note and a $10 billion note. I used to have a $10 billion. I gave it to Brian Nixon. He hasn't given it back to me yet. I'm still looking for Brian to give that $10 billion, and it's worthless. You could buy a loaf of bread with that. And so the whole economy collapsed. As a result, they were not buying the chemicals to treat the water. People were desperate for water. They would drill through pipes, which they thought were water pipes, to connect, and they went right through the sewer line. Yeah, and the sewer line and the water got mixed. They were drinking cholera out of the taps.
Oh, my.
There were 100,000 cases in a very short time, 10,000 deaths. The country had no money, no medicines, no IV fluids. A church in Harare, Zimbabwe. The pastor's named Tom Daschle. He's the same as our former senator in the States. He went to the minister of health there and actually asked what the church could do. They raised enough money to run the whole country's medical supplies for 4 months from one church, 16,000 member church.
Wow.
They imported supplies from South Africa, and Andrew Reed told me this story. He said that people were dying. They stacked up the bodies like cordwood from cholera. They had so much dehydration they would die. They took a team from that church to a place called Kadoma, not far from our mission. And they arrived at midnight, 3 medical students, 3 nurses, 3 doctors. They worked all night sticking IVs into the jugular veins, the popliteal veins, the antecubital veins. They did not have a single death that night. Put in 1,000 liters of saline, 1,000 in one night, and nobody died. at night. Then they brought back a team of evangelist health educators, and they taught the people how to prevent from cholera and other things too, like HIV/AIDS. And there were 4,500 converts in that area because of the health evangelism. It was incredible.
Health evangelism,
yes,
I like that.
Yes.
And that's primarily what, is that, would you say that's the twist that you bring? I mean, you work with medical schools and hospitals in Africa. Is that the ultimate aim?
Absolutely. The reason we went to Africa, I trained as a doctor, my wife trained as a nurse. She's also a doctor, a PhD in nurse and health education. We went there primarily, our motivation was to share our faith. In actual fact, we thought we did a lot more work, better work as tent maker missionaries teaching in the medical school than we did when we were in the bush, in the mission, because we were more suited for working with medical students and house staff and young doctors and sharing our faith. And there's a guy there now, the same guy, Andrew Reed, regarding the HIV plague thing. You know, 1/3 of the population, when we were there before, 1/3 of the adult population has HIV/AIDS. Just think about that. Look at the audience here tonight. If you just knocked off 1/3 of the audience, that's exactly what the country was. It's a little bit better now, but not much. They had no medicines for HIV/AIDS. There were no antiretrovirals. It was too expensive. Now they have treatment for the disease, as we all know, and because of the Bill Gates Foundation and other foundations, everybody that has the disease can get treated if they want to be treated. So it's changed, and there are a lot of Christian doctors working in this area. Andrew Reed is one, James Hakeem, friends of mine, another one. And Andrew, I asked Andrew what his most important job was. He's a member of this church, Celebration Church, working with the clinical research for HIV/AIDS. He said, no, my most important job is working for Champions for Christ. I said, what's that? They have 400 young people in their congregation of 16,000 that have HIV/AIDS that are involved in this ministry. They're all infected, they're all on drugs, and one example was a young girl that was raped when she was 14 years old. That's how she got HIV, at 14 years old. She's on antiretrovirals. She's 19 now, or was when I was there last year, and she plans to go to medical school and share her faith. And their Champions for Christ is an outreach to other young people with HIV/AIDS in that community. It's incredible. That's his most important job. He started that ministry, Andrew Reed.
What are some of the stats in Africa for HIV/AIDS?
Well, again, it's hard. Countries are different. Botswana is one of the highest. Zimbabwe is high. 1/3 of the population when we were there. Now it's about 1/5 of the adult population, but the young people are finally getting the message about how to prevent this. Obviously, it's sexual promiscuity. It's all heterosexual transmission, period. No IV drugs, almost virtually no homosexuality, all heterosexual transmission.
How is your work with medical schools helping to abate some of these problems?
Well, in medical school, there's two aspects to that. We're trying to prevent the disease from occurring. My wife is really much involved in that when she teaches in the Department of Health Education, because we're trying to get the message out how to prevent these diseases, and that's the most important message. On my end, when they get to the hospital, they're almost dying. They have tuberculosis, they have other kinds of diseases, lymphomas, cryptococcal meningitis, terrible things related to the HIVs. We're trying to keep them alive, usually at the end of their life. So that is a ministry in itself, with hospice and Christians working with those people that are at the end of their life. Her job is more important than mine because she's trying to help people prevent this disease.
Okay, one final question, Doc. We're reading about some horrible things, tremendous judgments that are occurring to the people in Egypt. Now, we're not seeing it, we're just reading the words, so the impact is different. You've seen some pretty shocking things. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll give you one example. It really hits hard when someone you know and love personally. A young man in our Bible college, at Zimbabwe Christian College, I've taught there many times, and he came into our hospital, my hospital, Perinatal Hospital, 1,000-bed hospital, with meningitis. I didn't know at the time that he actually was HIV infected, and that's how he got this fungal meningitis. And it takes, on average, between 18, 19 days from diagnosis after you do the spinal tap and make the diagnosis, and we had no drugs, none, to treat cryptococcal meningitis. There was drugs available, we had no money for the drugs. And so he was in a coma for 18, 19 days. A young Bible college student who had, after he found out he was HIV positive, he did not date. He wanted to be eventually married. Obviously he didn't. He wanted to be a pastor. In the middle of his training to be a pastor, he got cryptococcal meningitis and died 19 days later. That was just unbelievable. A personal friend.
Oh my. Did you bring any pictures for us to see?
I did.
Have we been looking at those?
I don't know.
No? They're right over here on the screen, I think. Tell us about some as
Can
we
I see
bring
them?
them up. Right behind you. You could look behind you or look over here.
I can look behind. Okay.
Wait a minute. Right over here.
Okay. All right.
There.
Thank you. Point. Well, that's a long time ago. That's when I was a young doctor. I stuck a chest tube in that guy's. He was fighting over a girl, and his friend, who was the other guy suiting as a suitor for this girl, stabbed him in the chest. So I put a chest tube in him, and he left the girl, and he actually became a Christian after he was at the hospital. This is a poor village, very poor village.
Next.
This is a more prosperous village. You can see the huts in the background. It's hard to see, but in the distance, that's a very prosperous village, not far from Chittimale Mission. That's very close to us. I'm doing putting a spinal anesthetic in there. Again, I'm a very young doctor during this picture. We're talking 40 years ago. My wife is behind there, giving a general anesthetic for putting on some plaster for I think it's a broken leg. And that's a young medical student with me from Illinois that I was working with there. I'm taking a patient out to the airstrip.
Is that you on the right?
That's the guy with the beard.
Wow.
That's me. I'd operated on the guy the night before, and he had ruptured intestine. I'm taking him out to the airplane. I also flew for the mission. I was a bush pilot for 2 years.
No kidding.
So out to that's the airplane, 9036 Charlie, Cessna 180. I flew that for 2 years down the lake to Binga every week to a mission hospital. Sue Alice, my wife, and myself. It's a long time ago. This is our family when we left Zimbabwe to come back to the States with this decision to return, and we did.
What year was that taken?
That's 1970.
And look at the little airplane he was holding.
Yeah. I came back in 72, and Bill Nice was a doctor at the time, and I sold him the airplane for $1.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he had to bill a sale for $1.
Do you have any other airplanes for sale?
That's Sue Alice with a young lady whose baby. She worked for us, and we came back and we got to see her baby.
Oh, beautiful.
And two nurses, a wonderful Christian couple I worked with. My hair looked like yours then.
We have similarities, don't we?
This is a HIV/AIDS patient. I'm listening to the chest, tuberculosis patient. A young medical student. This man has tuberculosis with Pott's disease. That's why he all shrunken like that. Spinal tuberculosis. That young man he's a Muslim, asked me to help him get into a training program, and I tried to do that.
Wow. Dale Ericson, helping heal the plagues of the world. We thank God for you, Dale.
Right.
God bless you.